Out of the forest, they saw a lone house with acres of land cleared near it. It was a typical looking farm with silos, barns, and supply buildings off in the distance. Moonlight fell on an open area, giving the scene a deceptively tranquil feel. As the group stepped out of the forest, the lack of sound was off-putting. "Remember," Han told Harmony. She slowly nodded her head. Next to the forest was a long driveway that went along the cleared land. It felt like a divider between the natural world and society's imprint on the world. When their feet hit the asphalt, everyone's bodies tensed in reflex. There was a feeling of danger being near civilization. Not the proof of culture, but the occupants were the source of the fear. Looking to the house, Han was curious about what would be seen inside of the picturesque home. He allowed Harmony to continue to lead the way, observing her actions and seeing how she would react to the new reality. There was a juxtaposition of haste and delay in her movements. "Is she going to be okay?" Jennifer asked him, breaking the silence. Possibilities are going through her mind, which won't be answered until she reaches her destination. The test is how she will react to facing reality, Han said. "What are we going to do if—" Grace left the words hanging. Glancing over to Grace, he saw her touching her pistol. Though her fingers didn't seem to have the same confidence they had before when touching the formerly reassuring tool. His lack of an answer weighed on her body as she nervously followed along next to him. Though there was a feeling of worry about the immediate future, both Jennifer and his mother looked calm compared to Grace. Seeing them overcoming their inner fears made him feel proud of them. Unlike with Grace, they didn't waste time asking questions they knew the answers to. Their situation would immediately fall through if Harmony's parents had turned to those creatures, considering they had no effective weapons. Han watched as Harmony went up the brick path to the house. She stopped before continuing, and it wasn't until they came closer that they understood why. "The door is open," Grace commented. "We should get ready for something to happen. Jennifer, you take Mom away from here if there are any signs of those creatures inside," Han ordered. Both of them shook their heads, refusing his words. "I'm not going to leave you behind," his mom said adamantly. "That's right. Unless we can all escape, we'll stay next to you, Han." Jennifer reinforced their mother's words. Han sighed at their stubborn behavior. Even though he thought it was silly, their attitude about facing danger together was heartwarming. "One of these days, you guys are going to have to make a difficult decision. I may not be with you, and I would hate for you guys to be taken advantage of with your stubbornness," Han lectured them. Looking at the two of them, he tried to get them to understand the seriousness of his words. Both of them looked at one another and nodded their heads. "We understand that the world is different now, but we won't compromise this family in order to save ourselves." Jennifer and his mother forcefully stared back at him. Putting up both hands, Han walked over to where Harmony was standing. She hadn't moved from her spot in front of the door, her face a mixture of fear and determination. "If you want, I can go into the house first and see if there are any of those things inside," Han said to her, causing her to jump from his sudden question. After calming down from her surprise, she shook her head. "I should go into the house and see if they are inside. It's the least I can do for them, as their daughter." Still facing away from him, she asked, "Could you come inside with me?" Han could tell from her shaking hands that she was terrified of going inside for multiple reasons. Being one of the first to see the creatures was likely still weighing on her mind. Reaching out, Han carefully intertwined his fingers with hers. Though his right hand still could feel her shaking, Harmony seemed to relax more from his gesture. They headed up the steps onto the wraparound porch, wincing from the creaking boards. The house looked very old, so it was expected for any weight placed on it to make noises. "It'll be okay. I'm here," Han said to her. With the welcome mat in front of the door, along with 2 lawn chairs and a table between them that had half-eaten food on the plates, it gave the impression of time being frozen. Dust hadn't had the time to cover things yet, so it still looked like it had only been a few moments since they were here. Stepping over the threshold, the hallway was dark. It was like stepping into a void, one that seemed to hide a sinister secret and enjoyed new prey. "I think my dad kept a flashlight in the desk inside the living room," Harmony said. Still holding his hand, Harmony turned to her right and entered a room that had partial moonlight streaming in through the window. Illumination from the moon seemed to enhance the darkness, creating a malevolent sensation. "It's over here," Harmony seemed to say to herself, as she waded deeper into the darkness. Staring back at the moonlight, Han viewed the lone, isolated patch encroaching on all sides by darkness, and thought it mirrored their own predicament. A groan and footsteps could at any moment signal the inevitability of danger, as they struggled to find light to pave their path. Creaking and groaning could be heard in the darkness from Harmony pulling open a drawer. The sound seemed to be absorbed into the void, feeding the feeling of isolation and danger. "Sorry," Harmony said to Han as the sound of rummaging could be heard. A sword of light seemed to pierce the darkness after a loud click was heard. Waving a cone of salvation, Harmony looked back at Han and smiled. "I found it," she shyly smiled. A small victory helped to push back the anxiety in her expression from earlier. Guided by the circle of light that danced across the floor, walls, and ceiling, the 2 of them began to explore the house. Just from the light of the flashlight, Han could see that her parents' home was substantial in size. Looking around the living room, Han saw bookshelves against the wall and packed with books. Instead of a TV, there was a small piano set aside in the corner. Diagonal to where they had entered, there was a doorway. Going through the door, the sight of an average-sized kitchen was seen. A large refrigerator, stove, and standard kitchen appliances were seen. "No," Harmony's voice was low and filled with despair. Looking to where she was facing, Han saw several dishes broken on the floor. Scraps of food seemed to be scattered away from the kitchen into what looked like a family dining area. By the amount of food that littered the ground, Han figured that there were several people. "I guess they were feeding the hired hands," Harmony said out loud to herself. Han was about to voice words of encouragement until his eyes followed a trail of silverware and broken dishes to where he noticed several drag marks in red. Such a sight could only mean a conflict had existed in that room. The feeling of a grip tightening let him know of an intent to stay by his side instead of running through the house. "You should head back to where the others are," Han said gently. "I'm not going anywhere," she firmly stated. Stepping over the scattered remnant of what was likely dinner, she forged ahead with conviction. Seeing everything illuminated with only the flashlight gave the experience a sense of detachment. Though the light flashed over the trail of blood, Harmony seemed to avoid the sight and just used it to provide direction. There was a hallway after the dining area. Looking to his left, Han saw the open door leading to where the others were waiting. Passing by an open door on their right, the flashlight lighted up the image of a bloody hand mark on the doorknob. With his foot, Han opened the door further for them to see an electric washer and dryer. Caked on the floor and walls were blood, like someone had tried to run into the laundry room to hide but was followed by something. Han checked on Harmony to see how she was digesting everything around her. Her eyes were slightly wide, but seemed resolute and not influenced by the madness being displayed. Making their way through the hallway, they passed by a door that had a hole punched through it. The ravaged door demonstrated the amount of power used. Harmony reached for the doorknob and looked surprised when it opened. Inside was a full-size bathroom that was lacking any signs of the carnage outside. One of those creatures likely made that hole to see if anyone was inside. Maybe this means that the creatures hunt with visual senses instead of relying on sound. Han hypothesized for himself and Harmony. Harmony nodded her head numbly, the circle of light trailing across the room. He led the way out of the bathroom, looking up and down the hallway. Though the room had a hole through the door, the cleanliness of the interior seemed to contrast the reality. At the end of the hallway, there was a lounge room with several chairs and 2 sofas. In one of the corners was a rocking chair with a basket next to it. The flashlight illuminated the balls of yarn and 2 large needles. After seeing such a homely sight, Han slowly noticed that the beam of light began to shake. He wondered what was wrong with Harmony. On Harmony's face, her lips were trembling as she tried to fight the need to cry. Looking back at the illuminated basket, his eyes followed the circle as it lowered to the floor and revealed a trail of blood. Slowly, the light went along the path and eventually showed an open sliding door with the blood continuing out into the eerie night.